Spain in the Contemporary Ages, the 19th century. Just over 200 years ago, a new historical period began. In this new period, which still continues today, the world population has grown 7 times more than in all the previous ages. New laws have also appeared to protect equal rights for everyone. There have been huge developments in technology too. The French Revolution and the Industrial Revolution mark the beginning of contemporary ages. The French Revolution. It broke out in France in 1789. People rose up against the injustices of absolutism, and they organized a government based on the ideas of the Enlightenment, such as equal rights and liberties for all citizens. These ideas were defended in 2 texts: the Declarations of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, and the Constitution of 1791. The Industrial Revolution. It started in the late 18th century in England with the steam engine invention. Steam engines burnt coal to heat huge water boils which produced steam. This steam was used to move machines like looms in textile factories as well as trains and steamboats. Spain in the Contemporary Ages. These are some of the events that are more important. There's the invasion of Spain by France, the War of Independence, which was against the French invasion and against Napoleon Bonaparte. The Carlist Wars, that was a sort of civil war inside Spain during the 19th century. We had also only one year of the First Spanish Republic. And then there is, of course, the monarchy, with in the beginning with Carlos IV, then Fernando VII. Now here are some of the most important names that you should remember. Carlos IV was the first king during the 19th century. Napoleon Bonaparte is a very important person in the 19th century, especially because he invades Spain with the excuse of going to Portugal. And then we have the Infante Carlos V, which was a frustrated king. The regency. A regency is when the king is very young, he's a baby or a child, and he cannot be king or queen. Then we have a regency. So in the 19th century, we have 2 regencies. First, the regency of Maria Cristina, and later the regency of Maria Cristina of Habsburg, which is a different Maria Cristina. Then Isabel II is a queen from 1833 to 1868. Amadeo de Saboya, which he finally didn't want to continue to be king. He refused to the throne, and so he was only there for 2 years because he was basically overwhelmed by problems and he wasn't capable of dealing with all the problems that Spain had at that moment. And then in the end, we can say that we have Alfonso XII. But with all these names, you can consider that you know who are the most important people in the 19th century. Now here is a timeline of the 19th century. The contemporary ages start in the previous century, in 1789, with the French Revolution. There are 2 things that change in the world at that moment which were really important. From the technological aspect, there is the Industrial Revolution. We start to have factories, and we have the steam engine is invented. Carlos IV is the first king during the contemporary ages, in the first king during the 19th century. And then we have the French invasion by Napoleon Bonaparte, that he had thousands of soldiers. And there is the War of Independence. The War of Independence is the reaction to the Spanish people to the French invasion. It was a Guerra de Guerrillas. It started in 1808, in the 2nd of May, el 2 de Mayo, because that's a very famous date in the Spanish history, el 2 de Mayo. And the War of Independence finishes in 1814. In the meanwhile, we have a king, which is a French king, which is José I Bonaparte. He was the brother of Napoleon Bonaparte. Then later, inside Spain, there's a kind of internal civil war between Carlos IV and his son Fernando VII. Fernando VII starts in 1814, but instead of going towards democracy, we go back to an absolutism. Now, it is very important that you remember that the contemporary ages is the transition from absolutisms to democracies. And this is not like a linear or a straight path. It has ups and downs, and it goes back and forth. Sometimes we can conquer democracy. For instance, in 1812 there was in Cádiz the first Spanish constitution that you got in here, 1812. That is a very important date in the history of Spain. And then we have the many other constitutions during the 19th century. Some of them are more liberal, some of them are more conservative, some of them defend more the citizens and the liberties of the people, others try to defend more the privileges of the higher classes. Then we have Isabel II that starts in 1833 and finishes in 1868. Even though Isabel II couldn't reign in the beginning because she was too young, so we have the regency of María Cristina of Bourbon. And then there is also several civil wars inside Spain called the Carlist Wars. Isabel II exiles to France. There's another constitution in 1869. Later comes another king called Amadeo I, which in this case we have a parliamentary monarchy. So this is a period of democracy, but with a king. Even though Amadeo I was overwhelmed and he renounces to the throne in 1873. In 1873 we have the first Spanish Republic. Republic is res publica. It is a Latin word which means cosa pública. It means normally that the country is managed by the people. Then later there's the military uprising against the first Spanish Republic, and we go back to the monarchy, a little back to the absolutism in some way. And it's the turn of Alfonso XII of Bourbon. So we call that period the monarchy restoration. Later, in 1885, we have the regency of María Cristina of Habsburg and the period of Alfonso XIII, that he could not start to be king until 1902, that is the 20th century. It must be said also that in 1898, if you remember from the past, especially from the period of Felipe II, Spain had colonies all over the world, but now we have lost most of them, and in 1898 we finally lose Cuba, which was Spanish, and the Philippines. And that is a very general overview of the 19th century, of the history of Spain in the contemporary ages. I hope you liked the video, and remember, work hard but also have fun. Spain in the contemporary ages.